biological post.a.me. Survive. The only question not answered by any scenario we have developed is, what level of human biological development will survive? In other words, will we have scientists and poets and engineers and children capable of holophrastic interconnectivity and farmers and astronomers? The list goes on. Silence. Chapter 9. Mass-energetic, massless life forms, biokinds, and transducers. The issue of galactic ecology. To understand what we are dealing with in regard to extraterrestrials on Earth, life physics will come in quite handy. Let me begin then with a summary of the ideas arising from life physics, which will help us understand the kinds of life forms that exist and why some of them manage to squeeze through dimension, including time. To begin, then, let me state categorically that 20th century physics is nothing like what today's physics is, or the cosmology to which we have been exposed, for that matter. Biological entities, such as ourselves and others from other planets with complex oscillating body masses, are literally complex oscillating biological entities, or COBs. As such, we are entities with mass composed of the same atoms as a table, a chair, a star. But, because we are also entities expressed beyond the infinitesimal, we can also touch the infinite, with hands that cannot touch and eyes that can see beyond the confines of our visual capacities. We are capable of being anywhere and anywhen, even as we are in our bodies here and now. The fact of the matter is that we are really not prisoners of our senses, once we realize that the world our senses paint it to be to us is not as things really are, never was, never will be. This makes reality at present a consensual solipsism that, if we by the proprioception of our bodies, would be the only reality we know. And yet, there are human beings in the world today who have managed to transcend this solipsistic reality and have come face to face, as it were, with a most weird physics well beyond the quantum. Why can we do so? The answer to this question can be expressed as follows: nature is not reductive in the way its expressions, extraterrestrials and us, are and become. In other words, it does not hold us to only a four spacetime reality. While the atoms in our bodies obey the strong and weak force of nature, the information cloud that superposes our bodies, what you and I call our spirit, soul and mind, is not bound by them. In fact, it is this information cloud that we really are, not the bodies that hosts it. As such, while our code bodies host it, our living matrices are actually the vehicles we can and must learn to use for travel along either the ordinate of time or the abscissa of space. I don't mean we must carry our bodies with us as we move through portals they are not designed to withstand. It is actually not really necessary, because we can create our own avatars out of the energy flux that is freely available between and inside the confines of the atoms which make up our physical frames. An avatar is simply another body conformed out of the same energy of which our four spacetime bodies are. Only this new body is somewhere or someone else, wherever or whenever it is we wish to go, whether it be to the future or to the past, to some other planet in some distant galaxy, or to the very source of all creation. Where or when it is we choose to go is not the issue, and not even important. That we choose and go is. There is another important discovery I must add to the foregoing: we can avatar ourselves a new body where we go because, within the information cloud we carry all the information necessary to conform a new one, even better than the one we left behind. The key to all of this, as transduction-capable informants have told us, is the ability to slip through the black holes each of us are. Is all of this weird enough for you? Well, it isn't to most extraterrestrials I know. In fact, it is this capacity that everyone seeks, even extraterrestrial groups not yet able, because it is the natural aim of all evolution. And they know it. This is what Jamison Neruda learned from the installation in northwest New Mexico, which was left to us by the so-called central race. In the sense of evolution, by this definition, we are babes in arms still. Yet, we are all capable of such a leap feat. It is not only inscribed in our genes, it is also part of the operating program in our information clouds. Just as our words and bodily emotions influence and guide our expression of our own individual genomes, so does our information clouds tell us of what is to come, if only we would listen. Some of the more advanced transversals, about whom George L. refers to as hyperversals, can do just this, and do it as a matter of course. This is, however, not to say that all transversals are able to avatar themselves in our spacetime matrix. Some can, others not. But the path is there, wide open to all. Is an avatar condensate necessary? No, not really, not at all times, although it is said to help depending on the when or where one chooses to transduce oneself to. There is an infrescence and technology that supports this capacity. Infrescence and technology meaning bedrock means, method, rules, protocols and processes that underlie it all, which are as near to a universal patrimony as we understand it at this juncture. Is it an infrescence and technology made freely available to all by those who have achieved it? No. The rules, means and protocols of existence at this higher level of evolution are quite different than life in the body existence, again as we know it. Our still bicameral consciousness in the body, even those humans who have achieved a sufficient modicum of integration to have earned the status condition of integrated conscious beings, cannot yet handle the upward integration into ever larger mind that is requisite to becoming a Q in Star Trek terms. I have been there and am certainly not yet ready for it, in spite of my own integration of body-mind and the ability to go anywhere, anywhen. I am still in kindergarten and I know it. We are, at LPGC, learning about the means, methods, rules, protocols and processes of this very weird physics. I won't say we have not been assisted, and remanded at times, by others far more advanced than us. We have. I know I have. The assistance, often not requested, but certainly always welcome, even the dissuading sometimes performed to our thinking for one reason or another, is part of what we have come to learn is needed by entities at the level we currently are. As all mysteries, the reasons evolve and, while not available at one time, they do become available later. And so we learn and move onward. And upward, as it were. This, however, is not to say we have suspended critical thinking in the face of superior, more advanced minds. Not at all. It does mean that those who have chosen to help us undergo the same get-to-know process with us we put through any one group we have not first encountered in the flesh, as it were. It is also not to say there have not been attempts at manipulating us before, there have been, several times. But, having learned from the emerging model ourselves, we have used its rules and processes to our advantage as well. Hopefully, our example will come through as you read this chapter. It is valuable experience vis-à-vis certain extraterrestrial groups. A new perspective arising from our working model. As I said above, life physics comes handy in explaining how nature is and how it works, in other words, how the multiverse is. Here I am going to make a valiant attempt at synthesizing what we know so far, and tie it all to the kinds of living forms it sustains. Let me also add the following two caveats before launching. The boundaries of science and science fiction have, for all practical purposes, completely blurred to the point that nothing presented today as science fiction is and can be stranger than science, more specifically the life physics arising through what we simply refer to as the working model. Additionally, the synthesis of what we know is written in a low-order language, such that a reader with no idea of what electrogravity is can grasp and have some understanding. The multiverse is intelligence itself. We call it the unum because it is seamless and completely connected. The only definitional framework we have so far found that allows us to work with it is the mathematical and nocive, or nonlinear grasp, concept of fluid level of manifestation, or simply LOM. All LOMs are intelligent paratexts, or open contexts interconnected to all other LOMs in the presence of an observer capable of vector intention, or movement in the unum. All of this is supported by mathematics, which enable us to treat all natural phenomena as topological, fluid and continuous events. This, however, does not mean that all LOMs do not exist in the absence of the observer, they do. But something happens when an observer, whether it is a COBE with a biological body form, or a transducer entity with or without a biological mass, enters the picture, the paratext of a given LOM. LOMs, being intelligence itself, make it possible for the vector intention of the moving intention-bearing entity to manifest paramotion, or motion in subquantum domains. This paramotion of an intention-bearing entity, say, one of us exploring the dynamics of black energy, or a transversal or hyperversal entity moving along a history line time-space ratio, or local MPO, a manifest production observership of a space-time ratio, is really real motion, even though it does not happen in the world. An entity does move from one time-space, or space-time ratio by going from one MPO in one ratio to an MPO in another ratio. Think of an MPO as a category reality literally created, or more properly, concocted by all observers in the given space-time ratio it is manifest. And consider the MPO as the resulting hologram in which the observers exist. I also said before that we can move along a timeline, or history, or laterally, if I may use a 4 spacetime metaphor, from one space-time ratio LOM to another. In the former case, the movement is space-like, that is, moving in time, therefore, the starting LOM and destination LOM are considered, looked at, as time-space ratio LOMs. Remember, they are LOMs too because there are observers in it. In the latter case, the movement is time-like, that is, the entity is moving from one space-time ratio LOM to another, and thereby the movement takes no time at all. How can this be possible? It is so simple that it will astound you. Let me generate 2 examples of how, one centered around a 21st century human extending from an Earth space-time ratio LOM, say, the San Francisco Bay Area, to a planet of a star in the Delta Quadrant of the M105 galaxy, the other about a mass-energetic transversal or hyperversal from a region in the Milky Way populated by globular star clusters near the center of the galaxy, traveling in time, space-like from one time-space ratio LOM in one history line of a specific local event to another time space ratio LOM in another history line of the same local event. Remember the description of spirit, soul, mind? We called it an information cloud. This cloud, we said, contained all the information necessary to merge with a body in space-time. That is, it has all information needed to activate this body, and if necessary, to assemble it from scratch. Most of you will have already heard of LEIM, light encoding of a reality matrix. LEIM is the objectification of a thing by a field-driven and field-contained matrix in a space-time ratio LOM. LEIM came into the public domain by way of Neruda's interviews, if you will recall. Well, the information cloud that we are contains within all expressible fields necessary to recreate the body to which it is superposed. Where would the matter come from to recompose a body? The answer lies in the mystery of negative energy and electrogravity, and how the subatomic particles in the strands of our DNA, copies of which exist in our information clouds, act as micro black holes for the drawing of required energy to conform a 4 spacetime body. So, for the first example, let's say this human being knows how to relax deeply. Relaxation of the kind we are talking about is often achieved while in a kind of mental, physical stasis that can then free up the mind-body to function with one degree of freedom, i.e., to produce a kind of energized body off the physical body. But what happens is that this person does not just produce one harmonic of his body, he produces several harmonic bodies. This is made possible by a kind of Meissner-anti-Meissner powering up of the physical body that can then produce harmonics of itself. Well, let's further say this individual chooses the first harmonic, usually the one which contains the same energetic level as the physical one, and functions with it as a 1 degree of freedom vehicle, but without the physical frame. Once he is an anti-Meissner body at the starting LOM, he can then slip through one of the wormholes his anti-Meissner harmonic can sustain for however long it take for him to move time-like from San Francisco to the near space of the planet in the specified quadrant of M105 and arrive at the target LOM. This is a method open to all human beings today. It is the method used by the remote sensor reportedly used by those mounting a response to the Animus threat to surveil and reconnoiter the Animus home planet. Transversals or hyperversals, mass-energetic and onto-energetic entities. Mass-energetic, biological body transversals or hyperversals, however, would more than likely use space-like movement to be in not just one space-time or time-space ratio LOM, but also in multiples or fractions of others. From our human vantage point at our current range of development, we can ask tongue-in-cheek, will the real hyperversal please stand up? The answer is unexpected. All of the copies are the same, which is to say, the hyperversal can be along as many when of a history line fractions as he can sustain harmonics. How can this be possible? Most mass-energetic transversals we have encountered are of relative maturity, and are capable of doing so by a mass-energetic pooling of their single-member energetics into an energetic overfunction, or by a mind that can function as a single degree of freedom organism. This overfunction can then supply the necessary negative energetics needed to allow any single unit individual member to extend equally to as many LOMs, whether time-space or space-time ratios, as desired. However, to go space-like is not the same as going time-like. In energetic terms, to use the latter takes more electrogravity than the former, when the former is done as an aspect of an overfunction movement. There are economies of scale involved in the deployment of electrogravity when functioning from within such a meta-organization. Link members tell us that overfunctions are the commonalities of both biokind and transversal life forms, some of whom are biologicals themselves. Transducer kinds. Transducer life forms, transversals or hyperversals, are numerous in the universe, some with far larger populations than Earth, by their own reports. In 2 basic functional forms, the onto-energetic one, OE1, is capable of transduction between LOMs with only its information cloud or essence from one to the other. It is capable of transduction along the time abscissa, moving space-like, or along the space-ordinate, moving time-like, from one time-space, or space-time ratio LOM. Some choose to manifest a physical body in the LOM at which they arrive. Others do not, preferring to remain discorporate within the LOM matrix, most likely at a position relative to 4 space-time LOM of at least 3 orthorotations, that is, 1080 degrees away at right angle away from any 4 space-time surface. All transducer life forms are capable of such movement. The ontoenergetic 2, OE2, is capable of transduction between LOMs in much the same way as the OE1, however, instead of traveling with just an information cloud, they bring along an energetic body akin to the first harmonic body of an extension neurosensor, i.e., an anti-Meissner body, which it can then use to conform as material according to the LEIM, light encoding of the LOM. Reality matrix universal process using a collocation of positive and negative energetics in the living matrix of the body generated. Whether an OE1 or OE2, a transducer entity is capable of thought-based technologies far beyond that of most ontobioenergetic aliens, extraterrestrials with a physical biological body, including us humans. While on Earth, either kind is capable of physical translation, movement through the quantum superdomain from one geoposition to another on the planet's surface. All transducer kinds use. What we discovered is an N1 vector intention, meaning that the energetics of a single hyperversal's vector intention is equal to the sum total of the vector intention energetics of the entire membership. In other words, each member of a hyperversal commonality functions as a single degree of freedom of the entire membership. As to living quarters and movement, we have now a basic understanding of how they create their living spaces and perform hollow movement within the unum, from any of their habitation LOMs to any other LOM along the space ordinate or the time abscissa. Early in our ENS, extension neurosensing, research, we had run across what looked like Earth-like panoramas in 3 superdomains are higher than 4 spacetime, syntonic diffusive, logomorphic, and unisonic, see figure 1 above. Our neurosensors, including myself, also ran across humanoids, some quite human in appearance, with energetic bodies quite like the anti-Meissner ones we used for ENS. We learned then that beings inhabited these landscapes, and that these landscapes were MPOs, manifest production observership, produced by the combined minds of those who lived in them. They were using the very same processes we used to create a hologramic experience of Earth, following what we soon also learned were tried and true processes which followed well-established rules and logics that were then beyond us, but which we have since learned to decipher ourselves. To MPO their landscapes, we also learned they were using what we now know as LEIM, that is, the light encoding of a reality matrix of their own choosing. Much like the universe itself, these LEIMs were Bekenstein-type MPOs, that is to say, they were landscapes with no boundaries but with finite information. Beings inside one of them was like being on an Earth-like planet, with mountains and oceans and blue skies, products of the collective imagination of that hyperversal commonality's loved memories of a past home long ago. Was it all real in the meaning of the world associated with a 4-dimensional world? It was to them as our world here on Earth is real to us, although theirs, we were told, was a conscious collective choice apparently shared across the entire membership, which supported its reality by the summative MPO of each member. Transversal agendas. It is our distinct impression that all hyperversals groups know of each other, across the entire universe. Further, it is also our impression that no more than 10% of all biokinds in the previous cycle, pre-Big Bang, made it through to the present one, post-Big Bang. The latter statement comes from a transversal with rather unique characteristics, who is the subject of closer scrutiny in the next section below.